From people lost in the desert to the sole survivor of a horrific plane crash, we've counted 15 times the number of people who have escaped death in the most difficult circumstances known to man. Interested? Come with me. Hey guys, we are from the channel, Another Curiosity. And here are the 15 incredible stories of human survival. 15. Chris Stewart. This is a story from Fareham, Hants, with a 12-year-old boy who was racing his 1000cc Mini when he hit a barrier at 40 miles per hour in what is known as internal decapitation. Chris' skull was severed from his spine and he had a measly 10% chance of survival, with doctors claiming he should have died instantly. Amazingly, in 2006 they reattached his skull using metal plates and bone grafts, and within a few years he was out of racing again. 14. Steve Callahan. It was in January 1982 that Stephen set sail in his small sailboat from the Canary Islands bound for the Caribbean, but not a week later his ship sank in a storm and he was left adrift on an inflatable rubber raft. For a full 76 days he wandered with nothing but a shirt, 3 pounds of food, some gear and water. Eventually he turned up in the Bahamas. He then wrote an autobiography of the entire ordeal, so impressive that 𝐂𝐨𝐴, the director of Life of Pi, asked Stephen to become a film consultant on how to live aboard a lifeboat. 13. Bethany Hamilton. One early morning in November 2003, when Bethany went surfing in Hawaii, she was with her best friend Alana and her family when a 14-foot-long tiger shark burst out of the water and ripped Bethany's left arm off her shoulder. Instead of panicking or crying, this 13-year-old girl swam back to shore with her good arm, even warning other nearby swimmers to get out of the water. Pretty much the toughest girl ever. 12. Joe Simpson. If you've seen the documentary, Touching the Void, you already know this guy's story, but for those who haven't, Joe was being lowered into a crevice with a broken leg when he disappeared from view, so his friend Simon Yates was forced to cut the rope, sending Joe to what looked like certain death. Instead, it turned into a 3-day struggle for survival in a frozen tundra, slowly moving through the snow on a broken leg, half frozen until his return. If you haven't seen the documentary, I highly recommend it. Very powerful material. 11. Marcos and Phil. Another ice story, this one set in 1982 on the high slopes of New Zealand's highest mountain, 𝐂𝐨𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒆. 2 men, Mark Inglis and Phil Doole, built an ice cave to escape the blizzard, hoping it would pass, but unfortunately it lasted a full 13 days, and all they had were meager rations with no prospect of warmth. Unfortunately, the circulation was cut off in his legs and they had to be amputated, something you should never have to go through at the age of 23. Interestingly, they still climb to this day, with Inglis becoming the first double amputee to conquer Everest, losing fingers and flesh in the process. 10. Julianne 𝐂𝐨𝒄𝒊𝒆. 1971, 93 passengers aboard Lanza Flight 508 when lightning strikes the plane over Peruvian rainforests and it crashes. Julianne was thrown off the plane early and landed 2 miles below the wreckage in dense undergrowth, from which she only emerged with blindness in one eye, a broken collarbone with cuts and bruises. She went down the jungle following the water flowing down the river until she found a hut where she waited for the owner to return. She then returned to civilization and continued her studies to become a zoologist. 9. Anatoly Bugorsky. A former Soviet researcher at the Institute for High-Energy Physics working on the largest particle accelerator at the time, the synchrotron �U-70. It was in 1978 that a malfunction forced Bugorsky to lean over a piece of equipment and look into the proton beam's chamber, but failed safety mechanisms failed to shut off the beam, and it slammed through his skull at faster than the speed of light. He claims to have seen a flash brighter than 1,000 suns, with no pain, but his face swelled up and the skin began to peel. Fortunately, he survived without losing his intelligence, but he tires easily, cannot hear in his left ear, and has occasional seizures. 8. Alcides Moreno. A window cleaner who, in 2007, fell 47 stories when his cable snapped alongside his brother Edgar, who tragically fell to his death. Alcides, on the other hand, was left in a coma with considerable damage to his body, but soon afterwards he woke up and made a full recovery, even walking despite his spinal cord damage. One of the doctors quoted, "If you believe in miracles, this would be one of them. I've seen it all, or at least I think I have, until something like this happened." 7. Ricky McGee. April 2006, a man appeared as a skeletal figure near a cattle ranch in a remote area of Australia. He claims the last thing he remembered was having his car stolen and being drugged by a hitchhiker, then awoke to find dingoes scratching him. He then lived for 71 days on a diet of leeches, frogs, snakes and insects with water from a nearby dam and a makeshift shelter. When he appeared again, he had lost more than half of his body weight, reaching 48 kilograms. 6. Aaron Ralston. May 2003, an 800-pound boulder falls on Aaron's arm and traps him inside a canyon wall. If this story sounds familiar, it's because we saw it in the movie 127 Hours, in which he spends 5 days trapped in a Utah canyon with little food or water. He wrote a book about how he used the stone to break his own arm, then cut the flesh with a switchblade until he could walk away and be rescued by some passing hikers. 5. Wenceslao Mogul. A man in 1915 captured during the Mexican Revolution, sentenced to death by firing squad. They filled him with 8 bullets and then one more straight to the head, but he survived, feigning death until the gunman left. He was interviewed by Ripley of Ripley's Believe It or Not, the story of the man who survived a hail of bullets that unfortunately left him somewhat disfigured. 4. Truman Duncan. A railroad commuter who underwent a terrible ordeal, having his body cut in half by a train. It was 2006 when Truman fell from a moving train in Cleburne and cut him in two, but he managed to stay conscious, calling 911 and his family to let them know what had happened. After a 3-week coma and 23 surgeries, he emerged confined to a wheelchair but very much alive, surgeons claiming it was an absolute miracle and he should not have survived. 3. Tammy Oldham Ashcraft. 1983, Tammy and her boyfriend Richard Sharp were sailing in the South Pacific when a Category 4 hurricane struck 19 days into a 30-day crossing. The ship capsized and Tammy, still on the lower deck, was knocked unconscious. 27 hours later, she woke to find Richard gone, with no lifeline or mainmast. Fighting the urge to give up, she sailed for 40 days to what she thought was Hawaii, ending up in port at Hilo. Shell-shocked but grateful to be alive. 2. Paul Templar. In the 1990s, Paul was working as a river guide with a native tribe in Zimbabwe when he received a surprise attack from one of Africa's most dangerous animals, the bull hippopotamus. While trying to save a colleague, the hippo swallowed Paul's head, then was beaten with a torn foot, a severed arm, broken ribs and holes in the chest cavity. He then underwent a 7-hour operation for his recovery and went on to lead safari trips and public speaking for charities. 1. Mauro Prosperi. At the 1994 Marathon of the Sands, in Morocco, Mauro was running the 6-day race when a sandstorm made him lose his way. He ended up forgetting where he was running and instead ended up very, very far from the track. Within 36 hours he had run out of food and water, so he started drinking urine and eating bats and snakes. He tried to commit suicide by slitting his wrists, but dehydration caused his blood to thicken, clotting each wound. 9 days later he was found by some nomads and taken to an Algerian hospital. We are producing videos on Wednesday and Friday here on the channel. If you liked it, don't forget to leave your like and activate the notification bell to stay on top of all the news. I'm waiting for you in the next video.